the owner of the struggling restaurant. Edgar walked up toward his restaurant. The late afternoon light was starting to fade, casting long shadows across the street. Just as he was about to head in, he paused, noticing something down the alley next to his building. There on the worn, cracked sidewalk, Graham was sitting with his back against the brick wall, a few scuff marks on his old jacket and his eyes cast down, deep in thought. The distant hum of traffic and the occasional clang of a streetcar bell echoed in the background. But Graham seemed lost in a world of his own, oblivious to the noise around him. Edgar squinted, watching as Graham sat quietly, almost blending into the dim alley. A wave of empathy hit him as he noticed Graham's slumped shoulders and the worn-out look on his face. If people knew what he's been through, Edgar thought. The sound of a school bell cut through the street noise, sharp and clear, snapping Graham back to reality. "Dad, I'm here." The cheerful voice echoed down the alley, bouncing off the brick walls as Evie came running towards him, her footsteps quick and light on the pavement. Her smile was bright, her laughter filling the alley with a warmth that seemed to push back the chill in the air. "You won't believe how much I learned today. My teacher said I'm super smart." Her voice was a delightful contrast to the quiet, gray afternoon. Graham's face softened, a smile spreading as he reached out to catch his daughter. "Tell me all about it, honey," he said, his voice filled with a warmth that almost melted the sadness from his expression. The two began walking, Evie's stories and laughter filling the air as they made their way down the street, heading toward Oliver's restaurant. As they neared the alley beside the restaurant, Edgar had already set up for the evening, stirring a large pot of soup that sent a delicious, rich aroma wafting into the cool evening air. A few others had gathered, their quiet conversations blending into the sounds of the city around them. Edgar, a tall man with a gruff exterior, looked up, his face softening as he spotted the familiar pair. "Graham, Evie." Right on time, Edgar's voice rang out warmly, lifting above the distant rumble of a truck passing by. The inviting scent of hot food lingered, wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. "Just filled the pot again," he said with a hint of pride, stirring the soup. Graham offered a grateful nod. "Mr. Edgar, I don't know how we'd get by without you," he said, his voice low and filled with sincerity. A faint clinking sound could be heard as Edgar ladled soup into a container, the small metallic noise breaking the quiet. "Ah, no need to thank me every time," Graham Edgar replied with a chuckle, handing over the warm container. "I just can't stand to see good food go to waste. And besides, today's a special recipe, though if it tastes awful, you can blame my daughter for that one," he added, his laugh blending with the sounds of the busy street just beyond the alley. Graham and Evie found a spot nearby to sit, sharing their meal as Evie's laughter and stories filled the air. Just as they were finishing up, Edgar wandered over and sat beside Graham, his footsteps light but slow. Graham noticed the tired look on Edgar's face right away. The faint sound of a distant siren filled the silence for a moment, but Graham leaned in, his voice gentle. "Is everything all right, Edgar? You look worried. Is it the restaurant?" Edgar's expression grew serious, the usual spark in his eyes dim. He sighed, his voice soft, but carrying a weight. "To be honest, Graham, things aren't looking great. Business has slowed to a crawl, and I don't know how much longer I can keep this place open." The evening sounds of the city seemed to fade as Edgar's words hung in the air. Graham felt a pang in his chest, realizing the man who had been so generous to him, and Evie was now carrying his own heavy burden. The faint hum of the city life continued around them, but in that quiet moment, it felt as if they were the only ones in the world. "If things don't turn around soon," Edgar said, his voice tinged with both desperation and exhaustion, "I'll have no choice but to close the place and sell." His words hung heavily in the air, a bitter reality sinking in. Graham stayed silent for a moment, feeling the weight of Edgar's admission. This restaurant had become so much more than just a place to get a meal. To him and Evie, it was a small beacon of hope, a reminder that kindness and community still existed. "There's got to be something we can do," Edgar Graham finally said, a hint of urgency in his voice. We can't just let this place close down. Not after all these years. Edgar shrugged, his shoulders slumping, as if all the energy had drained from him. I've tried everything, Graham. Promoted the place, offered discounts, tried to draw people in. But with the economy the way it is, people just aren't eating out as much. His voice carried a sense of defeat, like he'd exhausted every last idea. Mr. Edgar Graham said, a determination hardening his tone, you've helped us more than I can say. Let us help you in return. There has to be some way to draw attention here, something different that might work. Though he had no clear plan, the resolve in Graham's voice was unwavering. Edgar's expression softened, touched by the offer. Thank you, Graham. It means a lot that you'd want to help, especially with all you're going through yourself. Though I don't know how, I hope truly that you and Evie find your way back on your feet, just like I hope for the restaurant. Graham nodded, his gaze steady. Edgar, I know what it's like to lose everything. It's a feeling I wouldn't wish on anyone. His eyes reflected a deep sadness, but also an understanding that reached beyond words. Edgar looked at him thoughtfully. You never told me much about what happened, Graham. How things turned like this for you. Graham sighed, his eyes distant. I was in advertising, he began, his voice soft but steady. I loved it, the creativity, the strategy. I was good at it too. But the company, well, they started losing clients. Budgets got cut, and one day they shut their doors. I was one of the last to go, hoping things would somehow turn around. The memory seemed to flicker in his eyes, like an old, worn photograph. The weeks after that were some of the hardest I've ever known, he continued, a faint tremor in his voice. I looked for work every day, but nothing. Soon I was behind on rent. Then my savings dried up and we were evicted. Just like that. Evie and I, we ended up out here. Edgar listened in silence, every word sinking in like the quiet of the street around them. The faint rustling of leaves in the cool evening breeze filled the pause, a reminder of how fragile life could be. Graham, I'm so sorry, Edgar finally said, his voice thick with empathy. Your resilience, even with all this, it's something to admire. I hope things turn around for you both, just as I hope for myself. It takes a lot of courage to keep going. Graham gave a small, grateful smile. Thank you, Edgar. Your kindness has already made a huge difference to us. I may not have much, but you can count on me for whatever you need. Shortly after, Graham and Evie said their goodbyes to Edgar and began walking towards the corner they now called home. The path led them to a small, abandoned house where they'd set up a tent under its overhang. The structure, though crumbling, still offered some shelter against the wind and rain. The old gate hung slightly ajar, almost inviting, yet Graham respected its invisible boundary, staying within the small backyard that provided a little bit of safety. The day faded, and as night settled in, Graham and Evie prepared to sleep in their makeshift shelter. The silence wrapped around them, broken only by the soft rustle of the wind through the trees and the distant hum of the city. As he lay beside his daughter, Graham held her close, the quiet sounds of the night mingling with the faint hope that tomorrow might hold something better. The day passed without them managing to find another meal, and when night came, Graham and Evie settled inside their small tent to sleep. The silence wrapped around them, broken only by the gentle rhythm of their breathing and the faint sounds of the distant city. Graham lay on his back, staring up at the ceiling of the tent, his mind racing. I have to find a way out of this. Something will come up. It has to, he thought, his mind stubbornly clinging to hope. Next to him, Evie was already asleep, her breathing soft and steady. She was everything he had, and he was everything she had. For her, I can't give up, he resolved, finally letting sleep take him. The night passed quietly until the early morning, when a sudden, harsh voice shattered the stillness. You two, get out, right now. "Or I'll tear down this tent." The voice was loud and filled with authority, jolting Graham and Evie awake. Their hearts pounded, and for a moment they were both too stunned to move. Evie, still groggy and frightened, turned to her father with wide eyes. "Dad, what's happening?" "Why are they yelling at us?" she whispered, her voice shaky. Graham took a deep breath, trying to keep his voice steady for her sake. "Stay here, Evie. Don't come out, okay? I'll see what's going on," he gently instructed her, masking his own fear as best he could. As he stepped out of the tent, he was met by the stern gaze of a police officer, his patrol car parked on the street with red and blue lights flashing against the darkness. The officer's face was hard, leaving no room for negotiation. "You're trespassing on private property," he stated coldly. "The gate looks like it's been broken too. Did you break in here?" The accusation struck Graham like a blow, and he quickly tried to explain. "No, sir, we didn't break anything. The gate was already open, and this place is abandoned. We were just looking for somewhere safe to sleep," he said, desperation edging his voice. But the officer seemed unfazed. "Doesn't matter," the officer replied sharply. "Abandoned or not, this is still private property. If you don't leave now, I'll have to arrest you and take the girl into custody." His words were a clear threat, and Graham felt a surge of fear for Evie. The idea of being separated from her was unbearable. With a heavy heart, Graham knelt down by the tent and whispered to his daughter, "Evie, we have to go now. Grab your backpack, okay? We'll find somewhere else." He tried to keep his voice calm, hiding the tremor of fear that crept in. Together, they packed up their things and walked away, feeling the officer's gaze following them like a weight on their backs. Graham fought against the urge to break into a run, holding himself steady for Evie's sake. Under the cover of night, they walked in silence. Graham felt tears welling up, but he forced them back. Evie, sensing his sadness, squeezed his hand a little tighter. She looked up at him, her eyes full of a resilience that always surprised him. "It'll be okay, Dad. Those mean men didn't hurt us, so it'll be okay," she said, her voice filled with a strength that tugged at his heart. He wanted to believe her, to feel the same hope she did, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed on him heavily. "I have to be strong for her," Graham thought as they moved further away, leaving behind the only shelter they had. "I can't break down. Not now." After wandering for a while, they finally came upon a small park. The soft rustle of leaves and the faint chirping of crickets filled the quiet night air. Evie was visibly exhausted, her steps slowing with each passing moment. Graham found a secluded bench beneath a tree and sat down, gently pulling Evie onto his lap. She leaned against him, her tiny body finally giving in to sleep. Just as she was dozing off, Evie mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper, "Dad, I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat?" She paused, a note of sadness in her voice. "I don't really like the food at school." Her simple words pierced through Graham's heart like a dagger. He held her closer, feeling the helplessness well up inside him. "How can I protect her," he thought, "if I can't even keep her fed?" As he sat there, watching his daughter sleep, the soft sounds of the night filled the air, mingling with the weight of his silent promise to keep fighting for her, no matter what it took. Something to eat, he thought. The ache of that simple need cutting deeper than he wanted to admit. Fighting against the tears threatening to spill, Graham gently stroked Evie's hair, trying to soothe her. "I know, sweetheart. I know," he whispered. "But tomorrow at school you'll get to eat during recess, all right? Just hang on a little longer. Morning will be here soon." Evie's tired eyes blinked up at him, her face pale from hunger and fatigue. Yet she managed a small, brave smile. "Okay, Dad. I love you so much, you know. I promise I'll grab some extra cookies for you," she whispered before finally drifting off, her breathing slowing into the soft rhythm of sleep. Alone with his thoughts as Evie slept peacefully in his lap, Graham let his tears fall quietly, each one carrying the weight of the helplessness he felt as a father. How long, God, he thought, his heart aching with the pain and boundless love he held for his daughter. He looked up at the night sky, searching the stars for even the faintest glimmer of hope. Please, give me the strength to change our luck. I'll take any opportunity, do whatever it takes. Just, please help us, he whispered, his silent prayer fading into the night air. When dawn finally broke, it brought with it the beginning of another day, one that Graham started with renewed purpose, taking Evie to school as always. It was a small routine, but it grounded him, giving him a fragile sense of normalcy in an otherwise chaotic life. As the hours dragged on, worry gnawed at him, and when it was finally time to pick her up, he was waiting at his usual spot, trying to mask his anxiety with a calm expression. Together, Graham and Evie walked toward Edgar's restaurant, hoping to find some comfort in the familiar place. But as they approached, Graham's heart skipped a beat. A for sale sign was hammered onto the front of the restaurant. A cold wave of dread washed over him as he stared at the sign, unable to believe it. This can't be happening. Edgar can't be giving up. He's the reason Evie gets more than one meal a day. I can't let this happen, he thought, his shock hardening into determination. When they reached the alley, where Edgar was preparing the day's meal, Graham couldn't hold back his concern. Edgar, what's going on with that sign? I can't believe you're selling the restaurant. I know you better than that. You wouldn't give up so easily, he said, his voice thick with worry. Edgar's face softened, a weary sadness in his eyes as he looked at Graham. I wish it were different, Graham, he said, his voice carrying the weight of months of struggle. But the finances, they just don't add up. I tried to make it work, but I'm out of options. Selling is the only choice left. I'm so sorry, Graham, for you and everyone else. I can't keep this going. Edgar sighed deeply, and then, with a glimmer of warmth, added, but don't worry this week. You'll still have something to eat. I'll be traveling for a few days, but my daughter will be here. She'll take care of things, and she'll look after you too. As Edgar's words sank in, a mix of dread and gratitude filled Graham. The thought of losing the one place that had kept him and Evie going nearly paralyzed him with fear. What if we can't find food? What if things get even worse? He thought, his mind swirling with anxious questions. But amid the storm of worries, a spark of inspiration broke through a glimmer of his past life as an advertising professional, a part of himself he thought he'd lost. His skills, his creativity. Maybe they could be the answer. A surge of determination filled him, washing away his fear. He looked up at Edgar, his gaze steady and focused. Edgar, I have an idea. Give me a chance to help you. I know exactly what we can do. Give me this week, Graham proposed, his voice steady but filled with urgency. Let me use my advertising skills to bring more customers to the restaurant. In exchange, my daughter and I will stay in the storage room, just somewhere safe to spend the night. There was hope in Graham's voice, but also a clear desperation. Edgar, initially taken aback by the offer, looked at him thoughtfully. The restaurant was on the edge of closure, and selling felt like the only way out. Yet, Graham's proposal, a glimmer of hope, felt like something worth considering. After a few moments of contemplation, Edgar nodded slowly. All right, Graham. You've got 1 week. If you can bring in enough customers to show there's still a chance, I'll hold off on selling. His words, though cautious, were a leap of faith in Graham. Graham's heart filled with a mix of relief and fear. He had a chance to save the restaurant and a safe place for Evie. The responsibility felt enormous. Thank you, Edgar. I promise I'll give this everything I've got. You won't regret it. As the day faded, Graham and Evie returned to the restaurant, their steps lightened by the thought of having a secure place to rest. When they reached the storage room, they found the door slightly open. Inside, a young woman was setting up a simple mattress among the stacked boxes, a small, thoughtful act that transformed the room into something more welcoming. Good evening, Graham greeted, his voice echoing gently. Sorry to interrupt. The woman looked up, her face softening into a warm smile. You must be Graham, she replied, stepping forward. "I'm Mira, Edgar's daughter. And this must be Evie." She knelt down to Evie's level, her voice warm and welcoming. "What a beautiful girl." Mira invited them in. "Come on, sit down. Make yourselves at home. I made some hot soup for you. I thought you might be hungry. Just wait here, and I'll grab it." In moments, the three were seated on boxes, each holding a warm bowl of soup. The delicious smell filled the air, wrapping them in its comforting warmth. As they ate, Graham looked over at Mira. "Edgar said he was traveling. Did he leave today? I was hoping to see him before he left." Mira nodded. "Yes, he had to leave today. But he left me with plenty of instructions. He trusts me to handle things here, and that gives me confidence." Graham smiled, admiration clear in his eyes. "You seem to have his kindness and his wisdom. You'll do well, I'm sure of it." Mira blushed slightly and smiled back, grateful for his support. "This soup is incredible," he continued. "Did you learn to cook from your dad?" Mira nodded, her eyes lighting up with a passionate glow. "Yes, I love cooking. It's a way to express myself. But my heart's really in music. Cooking feeds the soul, but music speaks to the heart." Graham listened, intrigued by her passion. Music really does have that power. It connects us to something bigger, something beyond words. "I love it too. I used to play instruments. Piano, guitar, a bit of violin." Evie, listening quietly, watched the lively exchange, her gaze moving between her father and Mira. It was rare to see her dad like this, smiling, engaged and relaxed. For once the worry lines on his face seemed to fade, replaced by something new, something almost happy. As Graham and Mira talked, Evie waited for a pause. Finally, with a sweet and innocent tone, she spoke up. "Daddy, don't you think Mira would make a great mommy?" Graham froze mid-sentence, caught off guard, his cheeks turning a shade pinker as Mira chuckled softly, both of them taken by surprise at Evie's candid question. The warmth of the moment lingered, wrapping them in an unexpected sense of family amidst the simplicity of their surroundings. Graham, caught off guard by Evie's comment, felt his face heat up in an unmistakable blush. Awkward laughter bubbled up as he struggled to find the right words. "Evie, goodness, Mira, I'm so sorry. She's just a kid. You know how kids can be, right?" He stammered, embarrassed but smiling. Mira's cheeks had turned a rosy pink too, but she let out a genuine, warm laugh. "It's all right, Graham," she replied, her voice filled with affection. "She's absolutely precious. I can tell she must miss having a mother around." Her tone was gentle, a mix of kindness and humor, which only added to the warmth of the moment. Instead of making things awkward, Evie's innocent comment brought a new closeness, a feeling of familiarity between them. They continued talking for a while until Mira finally said her goodbyes, leaving Graham and Evie alone in the quiet of the storage room. As they lay down on the makeshift mattress, a comfortable stillness filled the space. The laughter and warmth of the evening still echoed in Graham's mind as he drifted into his thoughts. Just before they fell asleep, Evie broke the silence. "Dad, I saw the way you were looking at Mira. You like her, don't you? Don't bother denying it." You looked all silly. Her words, so straightforward and innocent, made Graham laugh out loud, caught off guard again. "All right, little one. Time to sleep," he chuckled. "No more talking. I'm tired." Evie giggled softly, not ready to drop the topic. "She liked you too. I could tell. She got all silly with you too," she added, her voice full of childlike confidence. Graham watched as her eyes slowly closed, her face settling into a content smile as she drifted off. Left alone with his thoughts, Graham couldn't help but wonder. Could it be true? Could Mira really have felt something, or is it just Evie's imagination? He pondered, a touch of hope warming his heart. Though it seemed unlikely given their situation, the thought lingered as he finally surrendered to sleep. The next morning, Mira greeted them with her usual bright energy, serving a simple breakfast with a kindness that went beyond expectation. As they enjoyed the warm meal, Mira turned to Graham, curiosity and hope shining in her eyes. "So, do you have any ideas for the restaurant?" she asked. Genuinely interested. "My father said you were talented in advertising. Maybe you have a plan." Graham chewed his bread thoughtfully. "I'm still working on it, but I'd like to take a closer look around the restaurant. I think that'll help me come up with something more solid. Good advertising is all about creating something that catches the eye." Sensing his need for time and space to focus, Mira offered, "I can take Evie to school for you, so you can concentrate. That way you'll have more time to work out your plans." Her offer was more than just practical help, it was a show of trust and support in his efforts. Relieved and grateful, Graham smiled. "Thank you, Mira. That would be wonderful. I promise that all you and your father have done for us won't be in vain." As Mira and Evie left together, a renewed sense of purpose filled Graham. Alone in the quiet restaurant, he felt the beginnings of inspiration sparking, a determination to make the most of the chance he'd been given. Graham stepped from the storage room into the kitchen, and from there he moved to the main dining area of the restaurant. Empty tables filled the space, waiting for customers who never came. The silence in the restaurant was deep, almost echoing, but to Graham, it was full of possibility. As he looked around, his eyes landed on a chalkboard easel near the entrance with the welcome sign inviting people inside. An idea began to take shape in his mind. When Mira returned, she found Graham sitting on the boxes in the storage room, excitement lighting up his face. Bursting with energy, he eagerly shared his idea. "What if we use that entrance sign to announce something new, something that grabs people's curiosity and makes them want to come in and see what's going on?" He leaned forward, his words filled with confidence. "We could advertise special dishes, promotions, or even host themed nights. Something that changes regularly to give people a reason to come back, to keep them guessing." Mira listened, her face brightening with hope, though she still had a hint of caution. "I love the idea, Graham, but we have to remember the restaurant's current condition. We can't afford to spend too much," she said gently, her voice balancing between excitement and practicality. "We need something simple but impactful." Graham nodded, understanding her concerns. He closed his eyes for a moment, mentally sifting through ideas, searching for one that wouldn't require much investment but would still be effective. Suddenly, a new idea hit him, and he opened his eyes with a spark. "What if we made it a game?" he suggested, his excitement building. A customer could order a random dish, any dish from the menu. But before they get to eat, they have to guess what it is. If they guess correctly, they get their meal and a drink for free. Mira's face lit up as the simplicity and fun of the idea sank in. "That's brilliant, Graham. It's interactive, and it's fun. It gives people an experience they won't forget, without needing a big budget," she exclaimed, her admiration for his creativity shining in her eyes. In a burst of joy, she stepped forward and hugged him. The hug caught Graham by surprise, and he felt his cheeks warm with a shy happiness as he gently hugged her back. When they finally stepped back, both wore shy smiles. The energy between them subtly shifted. Clearing his throat to refocus, Graham said, "All right, let's start planning. We'll need to spread the word, and maybe we can come up with other games or events. Something fresh every day so people always have a reason to return." Mira nodded, her eyes full of excitement. "Yes, let's do that. And I have a few ideas that might work well with our budget too." They exchanged thoughts and suggestions, hope filling the space as they worked out the details. For the first time in a long while, the future of Edgar's restaurant felt full of potential. 2634, with a plan ready and anticipation building, Mira took the chalkboard and in her neat, inviting handwriting she wrote, "Order a random dish and guess the name. If you get it right, your meal is free." Placing the sign out on the street, she felt a mix of nerves and excitement. They were placing their bet on curiosity and creativity, hoping that it would be enough to draw in the people they needed to save the restaurant. 27:05, curiosity was already beginning to breathe new life into the restaurant. As the doors opened, Mira busied herself in the kitchen, trying to calm her nerves with daily tasks, washing the few dishes, cleaning, drying. Will anyone take the bait? What if people don't want to risk it? She knew the idea was clever, but clever ideas didn't always work in reality. Anxiety bubbled beneath the surface, but she tried to stay hopeful. Then, a sudden sound broke the quiet, a soft ring, as the bell above the door chimed, signaling a customer's arrival. Mira's heart skipped, and she quickly dried her hands on her apron before stepping out to greet them. There stood a man, curiosity all over his face, glancing from the sign back to her. "I saw the sign at the entrance," he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. "How exactly does this work? Do you really eat for free?" Mira's excitement was almost contagious as she explained, "You order a random dish from our menu, and I'll prepare it for you. Before you take a bite, you try to guess the name of the dish. If you get it right, the meal and drink are free." Her enthusiasm shone through, the sparkle in her eyes unmistakable. This simple interaction could be the beginning of something wonderful. The customer chuckled, clearly intrigued. "Interesting. I'll take the challenge. Let's see how this goes." "I'll have a random dish, please," he said, sitting down at a table. Mira, almost unable to believe her luck, nodded eagerly and rushed back to the kitchen to prepare his dish. As she gathered ingredients, a surge of optimism filled her. This just might work, she thought, allowing herself a small, hopeful smile. Meanwhile, in the storage room, Graham paced, caught in a whirlwind of anxiety and anticipation. Every few minutes he'd peek toward the kitchen, hoping for a sign from Mira. The silence only heightened his worry. What if no one comes in? What if this is a total flop? But he forced himself to push those doubts aside. "No, I have to stay positive. It'll work, it just needs time." He waited for news all morning. But as the time neared to pick Evie up from school, he reluctantly left. However, when he returned, he was greeted by a sight that immediately shifted his mood. Mira was out in the alley, cheerfully serving food to the homeless crowd. As soon as she saw Graham and Evie, her face lit up, and she rushed over to them, her excitement spilling over. "You won't believe it, Graham. It worked. We had more customers today than we've had in a long time. You did it, you're brilliant." Her joy was infectious, her eyes practically glowing with pride and relief. Hearing this, Graham couldn't help but laugh with happiness. "Really? That's amazing. You have no idea how relieved I am right now," he learned that. Out of the new customers, only 4 had correctly guessed their dishes, meaning they had both foot traffic and sales. A promising combination. "But we can't rest just yet," Graham added, his mind still buzzing with ideas. "We need to keep things fresh." While I was waiting, I thought of something new. What if we did the same with juices? Customers could try to guess the flavor. If they get it right, they can have as many refills as they want. Mira's eyes sparkled with newfound excitement. "I love it. People are really drawn to these kinds of challenges, especially younger folks. Let's get it going tomorrow." The next day, another sign was placed out front, inviting customers to guess the juice flavor, win free refills. The gamble on creativity and curiosity was beginning to pay off, and hope was back on the menu. 3047 out on the street. The sign gleamed with the latest offer: order a random juice and guess the flavor if you get it right. Drink as much as you want. Expectations were high, and the idea did bring in some curious customers. But as the day went on, Mira noticed the flow wasn't as bustling as they'd hoped compared to the previous day's excitement. The customer count seemed to level off. As the afternoon wore on, the occasional customer would wander in, intrigued by the promotion, but the numbers began to dwindle. At the end of the day, Mira found Graham sitting in the storage room, concern etched into his expression. "Graham, the juice idea was clever, but it didn't bring in quite the numbers we needed," she admitted, a hint of disappointment in her tone. I think we need something more unique. Something that really grabs attention, something people can't find anywhere else. Seeing Mira's concern, Graham thought deeply, searching for a fresh approach. Then he remembered something: her love for music. Mira, you mentioned you like music, right? Do you play any instruments? Ever performed for anyone before? Mira looked at him, surprised by the sudden change in conversation. She hesitated, then replied, "Yes, I love music. I play a bit of guitar, but I've never performed in front of anyone. I usually just sing to myself or for my dad. Why do you ask?" Her voice carried a note of suspicion, sensing where this might be going. With a knowing smile, Graham let his silence do the talking, and the understanding quickly dawned on Mira. "Wait, you're not suggesting I perform, are you?" she asked, her voice laced with nervous laughter. "Graham, I don't know if I can. It's a great idea, but what if I get too nervous?" Seeing the anxiety in her eyes, Graham softened his tone, sensing her fear. "How about this?" he offered gently. "Start by singing just for me and Evie. Treat it like a rehearsal. If you can sing for us, it might feel easier to perform for a few more people in the restaurant." Mira hesitated, visibly nervous. The thought of singing, even to a small, supportive audience, touched her deepest insecurities. "But what if I mess up? I've never studied music properly, Graham. I'm just an amateur." Graham held her gaze, his voice steady and encouraging. "Mira, we believe in you. Whatever happens, we'll be here cheering you on. This is a chance to share something you love, even if it's just with the two of us." Evie, ever the cheerleader, chimed in eagerly, "Please, Mira, I really want to hear you sing. I bet you sound like a princess from the movies." Her eyes sparkled with excitement, her words giving Mira the final bit of courage she needed. After a moment of reflection, Mira nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "All right, I'll try. But no promises, okay? I'll sing for you too. But that doesn't mean I'll sing for the whole restaurant." That evening, the storage room transformed into an intimate stage. They sat together on boxes, Graham strumming his guitar as Mira began to sing. Her voice was soft and sweet, carrying a warmth that filled the small room, revealing a hidden talent that even Graham hadn't fully expected. As he played, he watched her, feeling something new and profound growing inside him, a sense of admiration, a quiet enchantment he couldn't quite explain. For Mira, the experience was equally magical. Immersed in the music and in Graham's presence, she discovered a part of herself she hadn't known before. Watching him play, the way his skilled hands drew melodies from the guitar, felt like witnessing a kind of magic. In that moment, she realized that her love for music and singing was more than just a hobby. It was a part of her, and perhaps a path towards something more. 34:58, yet her emotions went deeper than her love for music. What truly captivated her was Graham himself. Realizing this stirred up a mix of happiness and nervous excitement in her heart. As the last note faded and her voice quieted, Mira's face glowed with newfound confidence. The experience, once frightening, had become a thrill. "Thank you, really. Now I know I can do it, and I'm ready to give it my all. Let's bring music into the restaurant," she said, her voice filled with energy and conviction. The next day, when the restaurant reopened, a new sign greeted passers-by: "Live music. Guess the song and win a dessert." The fresh concept sparked curiosity, attracting people interested not just in food but in a unique experience. Graham had worked hard, setting up a small stage from stacked crates, adorned with colorful fruit, to create a cozy space for Mira. Despite its simplicity, the stage had a warm, inviting charm. Dressed in work clothes that Mira had provided, Graham took on both server and chef roles, moving through the kitchen with surprising skill. Little Evie, too, was determined to help, moving around the restaurant with a focus that captivated everyone. She fetched ingredients, carried plates, and assisted her father with a grace that only a child's enthusiasm could bring. As the afternoon wore on, the restaurant filled, the promise of live music and a fun guessing game drawing in an eager crowd. Mira's voice, sweet and captivating, transformed the space, each song greeted by enthusiastic applause. Customers joined in on the game, trying to guess each song's title to earn a complimentary dessert. Busy as he was with orders, Graham never missed a chance to glance toward the stage. Every time he passed by, he'd steal a quick look at Mira, his smile softening as he watched her sing, the music filling the room and her voice lighting up the space. Their eyes would meet briefly, exchanging warm smiles before he returned to his work. Yet the smile lingered on his face, a quiet reflection of his admiration for her. After one such glance, Graham returned to the kitchen, where Evie, always observant, piped up, "Daddy, you've got that silly smile again. I still think you'd make a great mommy and daddy pair." Her tone held a mischievous gleam, and Graham, caught off guard, chuckled, quickly refocusing on the task at hand. "All right, let's focus on the dishes." "Okay," he replied, trying to sound neutral, though he felt light-hearted and nearly buoyant. "And remember, be careful with the glasses. Use the chair if you need to reach them." For Graham, that day wasn't just about helping the restaurant, it was something more. And in the days that followed, Edgar's restaurant only grew in popularity, the number of customers increasing daily. People came not only for a great meal but also for the welcoming atmosphere and the warmth of Mira's music. But by the unique experience the restaurant now offered, it was against this backdrop of success and infectious joy that Edgar returned from his trip. Approaching the restaurant, Edgar could hardly believe what he was seeing. The entrance was crowded with people, a scene he hadn't witnessed in a long time. The sound of his daughter Mira's voice, singing to an enchanted audience, reached his ears, blending with the cheerful murmur of the customers. The "for sale" sign that had once marked the facade of the restaurant had disappeared. Entering the restaurant, Edgar was even more surprised to see Graham, who had taken on the role of server with the naturalness and elegance of a true waiter, dressed impeccably. And with a smile that radiated happiness, Graham greeted Edgar with genuine joy. "Welcome back, Edgar. How was your trip? I hope it wasn't too tiring," he said with a simplicity that hid the effort and dedication behind the transformation of the restaurant. Edgar, still trying to grasp the situation, laughed with emotion, allowing himself for the first time in a long time to cry with happiness. The success he saw before his eyes was something that in his darkest moments he had never imagined possible. "You've done an incredible job. It's a real miracle. I owe my life to you, Graham." Despite the emotion, without wasting time, Edgar returned to his seriousness. "But it seems we don't have much time for talking and crying. We have a lot of work to do. Come on back to action," he declared, taking his place in the restaurant with a new energy. The collaboration between him and Graham flowed naturally, as if they had been a well-tuned team for years. This moment marked not only the recovery of the restaurant, but the birth of a new family, united not by blood ties, but by shared dreams, efforts, and above all, music. The transformation of Edgar's restaurant into a lively and joyful meeting place was living proof that even in the darkest moments, hope and creativity can open unexpected paths, bringing light and color to the darkest days. At the end of a busy day, the restaurant finally found its deserved rest. It was in this moment of calm that Edgar called Graham for a private conversation in the storage room, while Mira and Evie enjoyed a moment of tranquility in the kitchen, enjoying the leftovers of a dessert. Edgar, with a feeling of pure gratitude, wasted no time in expressing his thanks to Graham. "I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You don't know how much this all means to me and my daughter. It wasn't just her who put on a show, but you as well." My friend Graham, humble as always, thanked him for the compliment with a bit of creativity. "The help of everyone, especially Mira. We managed to overcome the challenges. I didn't do this alone, Mr. Edgar. I couldn't have done it without her." Edgar smiled upon hearing Graham's acknowledgement of Mira's role in this achievement. "Say what you will, but you can't deny how skilled you were tonight. You served the customers as if you'd been doing it for years, and they seemed very satisfied with the food. You've proven yourself to be an excellent waiter and cook." Then the conversation took an unexpected turn. Edgar's expression suddenly became serious and direct. "But I truly hope you'll be as good a son-in-law as you are a worker. Or did you think I didn't notice the smiles exchanged between you two?" He declared, an observation that completely took Graham by surprise. The mention of that possibility of a deeper relationship between Graham and Mira coming from Edgar made Graham's face turn a deep red. The idea that his feelings for Mira could be so evident as to be noticed by Edgar left him speechless. A mix of happiness and embarrassment flooding his being. I don't know what to say," Graham stuttered, and laughed nervously. After that day, the course of everyone's lives took an unexpected path. Edgar's perceptive observations about the connection between Graham and Mira proved true. Graham proposed to Mira shortly after Edgar's return. Mira's positive response was not a surprise to either Evie or Edgar. The wedding was celebrated 2 months later. In the meantime, Graham became part of the restaurant team, joining forces with Mira. Their teamwork not only kept the restaurant thriving, but it opened the door to bigger dreams they could pursue together. Built on respect and a shared passion, their collaboration eventually brought in enough to buy a house. Evie, now a bright and joyful presence both at the restaurant and in the lives of Graham and Mira, was overjoyed when she learned she'd soon have a new sibling. This news added new meaning to their journey, symbolizing a story of resilience, love, and the start of a promising future. As the years passed, the restaurant became more than just a local favorite. It grew into a successful franchise across the city. Graham's innovative vision, combined with Edgar's unwavering dedication and Mira's steadfast support, transformed the restaurant into a symbol of resilience, creativity, and triumph. The stability they achieved together was a testament to the power of teamwork, love, and faith in each other. The days of struggle and uncertainty were replaced by a future filled with joy and prosperity. Every challenge that came their way was seen as a new opportunity to grow closer and stronger. Their legacy, marked by music, the unforgettable flavors of their dishes, and their love for one another, became an inspiration for everyone they met. A reminder that unity and love can turn dreams into reality. If you enjoyed this story, please show your support with a like and join our community by subscribing to the channel. Your support inspires us to bring you new, heartwarming stories almost every day. Don't miss out on the next amazing tale coming soon. Thank you, and see you next time.